Let's make a start anyway. So, folks, thanks for joining in to the Australian Electric Vehicle Association's second webinar for the year. We try and run as many of these per year as we can. We get as many interesting speakers as we can to talk about topics relevant to electric vehicles, electric vehicle technology, and the way we as consumers interact with EV technology. So I'm Chris Jones. I'm the president of the Australian Electric Vehicle Association. And been involved with the association and EVs in general for about 14 years now. So today's topic is a hot topic, pardon the pun, electric vehicle battery fires. What's the risk and what can we do about managing the risk? We've got hopefully 4, potentially 5 speakers. I'll hopefully go around the room correctly, but we've got Niklas Norlin from Mouse Technologies, which is a fire suppression technology, amongst other things, company. So really keen to hear about that. We've got Dan Fish from EV Fire Safe, filling in for Emma Sutcliffe, who's possibly stuck in traffic right now. Hopefully she'll be able to join us later. We've got Luke Workman dialing in from Electric Goddess in California. Luke's been doing a lot of consulting in the world of electric vehicle design and engineering and the opportunities for failures to work their way into that manufacturing process and what can be done about it. And hopefully soon we'll also have Chris Wood from Allianz Insurance, and he can give a quick presentation on the impact that battery fires are having on insurance premiums and managing that risk. So I'll keep an eye on the chat to make sure that I can ensure our speakers can join us. But if I may just throw to Dan to open up about the actual battery fire risk in electric vehicles. Take it away, Dan.
Yeah, good evening or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. I know we've got Luke, at least, coming from over in the States at 2 o'clock in the morning. Appreciate that, huge effort. I'll jump in and try and share a presentation here. We've got a very quick one from EV Fire Safe. Where are we up to? Coming at the wrong slide, but there we go. I'll get that one out of the way there. So EV Fire Safe has been funded by the Australian Department of Defence to look at electric vehicles, primarily where they've been connected to charging and incidents of thermal runaway. Going to push through this really quickly because we don't have a lot of time. So out of a global fleet of around about 26 million cars on the road, we've only been able to confirm around about 466 cases of actual thermal runaway from these vehicles. If you were to turn around and start looking at your e-bikes and e-scooters, we're seeing those things globally daily going up. Mass loss of life, mass numbers of burning buildings, those sorts of things. Very different story where we're looking at a road registered passenger electric vehicle. So I've just got to get the other stuff out.
And Emma has finally made it to join us. Hi, Emma.
So quickly for Australia. So we've just reached 180,000 electric vehicles in Australia. Tesla have just announced they've just sold their 100,000th EV. And we've had a total of 6 cases of thermal runaway. None of those were involved or caused by charging. So we had 3 where we had the garages that they were in burned down, the houses, house fire kind of situation. We had 1 that was arson. We had 1 that was a high-speed crash and the vehicle left the road. And we also had the next one we were able to investigate, if I get to the right slide. Sorry, out of sync. But we're looking at the leading causes here. So what we've got is a decreasing number of incidents where we haven't been able to put a cause to it because we've been able to get more education and awareness out there to responders, to fire investigators, all of that. In the early stages, a lot of the biases were basically going, there was an EV in that garage, it must have been it. There was an EV in that crash, it must have been that. But now they're getting a little bit more maturity around doing the fire investigation and trying to ask the right questions and what's actually contributed to these events. So primarily we're looking at collision. So be that where a vehicle has left the road and hit a tree, hit a fence post, those sorts of things. where we've had damage to the battery packs, or it may be a impact where it's struck something on the road. So we've got one which struck a tail shaft of a truck that was scrap metal. We'll have a look at that one in a second. Another known cause has been submersion. So we're not talking about just driving through a creek or a bit of a puddles, or when it's raining at nighttime or whatever. We're talking about being submerged for a prolonged period, and especially in salt water as well. So those two there is a large number. Then we've got recall. So we're aware of the Hyundai Kona situation. We're aware of the Chevy Bolt situation. We've got Porsche, we've got Audi, we've got a fair few of them out there at the moment have recalls that have been specifically to the battery packs. And when you have that situation, you'll be getting some good information from the OEM about don't charge it to 100%, don't park it in your basement car park in your apartment building, and those sorts of guidances. That's where we know we've got an increased risk or concern. So please be respectful of that information you get from the OEMs. The other one, which as for Australia is half of the incidents, has been an external fire. So that may be the garage fire or building fire that's taken the car with it. So the last one we were talking about before from the Australian situation is the Tesla that impact the tail shaft of the truck. So it was an 18-kilo chunk of steel that was scrap metal that was left on the road after it fell off the back of another truck. Some other cars have hit some other debris and whatnot. Unfortunately, the Tesla Model 3, it collected the tail shaft and it's done some carnage to the bottom of the battery pack. So we joke about this being my first company car. So thank you very much to Tesla Australia. We're able to acquire this car from them, and the benefit for us has been this was actually a Tesla-owned car. So Tesla owning the vehicle and Tesla having all the telemetry around this, we can tell you this car was traveling at 111.98 kilometers per hour when it hit the tail shaft, suffering a 0.2 G-force impact. And the vehicle, I can't remember, I think it was something like 78% state of charge. We've got all of that data to go with this vehicle crash that did result in ended up in thermal runaway. However, going through the car, there was actually a water bottle sitting in the center console. Even the label around that didn't actually have any fire damage. The level of damage penetrating into the car was a lot less than we're expecting. It was actually really surprising how well the car's handled that. So that was fantastic. What we had here was the tail shaft has come through, scraped past here, slightly knocked the oil filter on the small front drive unit, impacted the front of the vehicle here, and it's basically torn its way all the way through this battery pack. When we found the tail shaft, we were really fortunate. It was like the smoking gun from this incident. The towee or the one of the fireys had taken that from the road and put that into the front seat of the car. It still actually had the aluminium from the base plate wrapped around it, and we were able to basically match up the two pieces of jigsaw and go, this is how far that's come through. It was really quite amazing. So finishing off with the vehicle, we removed the battery pack, and rather than just leaving that all to go to waste, we were able to use this as a multi-agency training exercise with the CFA, with the Victoria Fire Rescue agencies, police, ambulance. We had the Department of Defence and several others there, being able to see the level of damage and appreciate all of that. But we're also able to actually get some of the rescue hydraulic tools under this car and go through and just understand how the vehicle reacts to these sorts of road rescue incidents as well. So that was a first for a lot of these guys to be able to get their hands onto one of these cars and go through that experience. So from an emergency responder perspective, we've really only got three options here to deal with a thermal runaway incident: cool, burn, or submerge. where we're able to, or where we're facing situations where we have life at risk or property at risk, firefighters will be doing things such as cooling down and suppressing and containing that event with hose streams. People will say, oh, you can get a fire blanket onto it, or you use a CO2 extinguisher, or you use a DCP extinguisher. If you get rid of the flames, it's kind of like having a gas bottle burning. If you get rid of that flame that's burning off the gas, but you've still got the gas there that's building up, you're changing your incident from a flaming one that may be controlled, potentially to an explosive event. Where we've got no real concern for life or property in that space, a real valid option there is to let it burn. As a firey, both Emma and myself are fireys. Been to plenty of car fires. I can say I've never seen any of those cars back out on the road after that event. Whether it's a little wiring fault under the dash or whether the car's completely destroyed, it's scrap metal value. A lot of people are saying, oh, you got to get it in there and put it out. But we actually understand that from even just a basic petrol or a diesel vehicle, the contaminants that are given off in the atmosphere from that, they're not great from the fireys. Even if the fireys are wearing all their firefighting gear, we're better off standing back and letting it burn out. That's also helpful for what's called stranded energy. In the UK, in Europe, they're really keen on the submersion method. What they're able to do is to put the vehicle into the skip bin or shipping container kind of thing, open topped, and just sit the car in there. If they have any concerns or experiencing thermal runaway, they're able to then fill that up as required, and it submerges that pack. It's not ideal, but it is a way of dealing with that vehicle in an incident as a priority. There are concerns as well, though, when you remove that vehicle from that water, you may still have reignition concerns and things like that, and it always needs to be controlled and treated with a lot of respect. That was extremely quick. How was that?
Fantastic. Well, that was great. Thank you, Dan. And since Emma's now been able to join us, we might as well get Emma to introduce herself.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Sorry I was a bit late. And thanks, Dan, for stepping in. So Emma Sutcliffe, I'm the director of AEVA Fire Safe. So, yep, left you in Dan's very, very capable hands to give an overview of what we do. And just quickly, Chris Wood from Allianz is just messaging me. He can't get into the webinar apparently. So
yeah, I've resent the link and everything, so I don't know what's going on, unfortunately. Yeah, I'll keep trying to get him on. Yeah, I'll keep trying to get him on in the meantime. Fantastic. Okay, well, in that case, we might head to Niklas. Now, Niklas is based at Mouse in Sweden, and Niklas can share a little bit of information about the technology that his company has been developing.
Yes, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I believe you can see my screen now, and I will just put it on full screen. And yeah, so thank you first of all for everyone participating in this and listening to all the exciting topics. It's a very important topic in today's society, as the electrical vehicles, batteries, and other lithium-related products are ever expanding and increasing in our daily lives. But basically, what we try to achieve and the vision we have at Mouse is developing basically fire safety products, extinguishing products that can basically be placed in compartments, enclosures, and put out fires where there hasn't really been any protection or opportunities beforehand. So that is what we're trying to have as in our DNA as a company, and always try to look for smart ways in incorporating our fire safety products and developing new ones in order to deal with today's challenges, basically in any type of environment. And as a company, we have a global presence. Me personally, I'm sitting located in Stockholm, the capital of Sweden. We have also people in Spain, the US, and then we also, of course, have a distributor network of some 30 partners today. But that network is also everly increasing. And The different areas where we are working, you can see that on the right-hand side, different applications areas, but today it's more of a focus in this presentation on the electrical vehicles and our contribution in order to hopefully be a part of the solution, you could say, and benefit society overall on a global scale. But basically what we've done at Mouse is that we have developed different type of fire safety extinguishing products that are all basically based on the unique and patented potassium mix. And the potassium mix in the products are all in a solid form, so like a solid compound. So the products doesn't contain any pressure, they're not needed any maintenance to be looked after and so forth. What the products do have is like an expiry date, as the milk can you have in your refrigerator as an example, but more and longer duration of time, of course, and a longer guarantee time in that sense. But basically what the potassium smoke does is that it goes in, it contains a very radical particles that goes in and interrupts the chemical combustion reactions of the flame and neutralizing the oxygen and the different particles, as you can see here in the text, that basically the flame contains of. But what it also does in a very effective way is also that it absorbs the heat from the flame. So within seconds, it can drop the heat in the flame down to very low temperatures, and in that way, through the tests that we've seen, also then hindering and interrupting a potential thermal runaway in a battery, for example. What the potassium smoke also does when it releases from the unit, it also creates like a protection for reignition. So if you would have a battery within a box, let's say, or somehow closed in enclosures, and you would have our products installed in that type of environment, the particles from the smoke will be like floating in the space, and that way also then contributing to this reignition as a way also then cooling down the battery. But yeah, so talking about the products, to give you an idea of what we're talking about here, the products are fairly small. You can all place them in your palm of your hand, basically. And of course, more information could be shared after this presentation as well. But we have 4 different versions of the products that we are focusing on now to really get to the bottom of the lithium battery fires and so forth. We have the smallest one, which has just like a 0.1 cubic meter capacity, which was basically the STIX Pro 1, which was released in 2021 with a more of a focus on the consumer market. And then going towards the larger products that we have a close collaboration with the NHS in the UK, for example, and looking at installing these in the hospitals there. So they wanted a bit of a bigger unit, but also the cable that you can see here sticking out from the V1, and also the cables you can see in the 5 and 10, and also being integrated in the STIX Pro 1. That is basically the detection cable. So that is what really sets off the chemical reaction and transforms the solid potassium compound in the unit to the smoke that then releases from the unit and then extinguishes the fire. If it would be like a battery or let's say an electrical enclosure, and if there would be equipment and stuff burning there. But some tests that we've done it with close collaboration with the fire and rescue services departments in Sweden, of course, making sure that people are well prepared, having the right gear on in order to protect themselves from the very toxic smoke that's been released. But what we did here in a fairly small test, and still something that we are looking into developing and evolving and doing it in a bigger and bigger and bigger scales, of course, to see how this also reacts with bigger, let's say, electrical vehicle battery fires and so forth. But in this case, what we saw is that when we have basically applied the products, theoretically, how we saw it being the best match for the type of size of the battery and the power of the battery, we saw that when we basically provoked the fire in the battery through a nail and a hammer, basically. Within seconds, the detection cables from the larger units, the STIX Pro 5, released the potassium, and the potassium then within seconds extinguished the battery. And then we waited and we waited, and there was never any reignition. But then when we did it in a bit of a lower scale, where we had basically decreased the capacity of the extinguishing agent, we saw that there was a reignition. So that really gave us the proof that we can continue building on that. It needs to be matched in a certain way in order to have the right amount of potassium smoke in order to create this cooling effect and absorbing the heat from the flame. But what we've done since then is, of course, also then patented the solution, in a sense where we want to really contribute, as I said in the beginning of our presentation, to really face the challenges and see if we can be part of the solution in society and on a global scale, of course. So we are having discussions with battery manufacturers, core manufacturers, to see if we can find a suitable collaboration and see if our products that we can implement in, hopefully, the batteries, because I think that Dan said it fairly well, that it was like putting out a fire in the kitchen by adding water to the roof of the house, basically. So you really need to get to the core of the source, in a sense, so really the core of the fire, and that's why it would be crucial in our understanding to really be able to put our units and this potassium smoke inside of the battery. So that's what we're aiming at. But yeah, with that said, if you would like to know more about us as a company, you can just take up your phone and you can scan this QR code, and you will be able to download our brochure, so you can read more about us. And I think that's it from us for now. And yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Niklas. We'll have a Q&A session after our speakers, and I still hold out hope that Chris will be able to join us, although I've sent several invitations. That's great. I'd now like to welcome Luke Workman. Anyone who's been on DIY e-bike forums for a long time might recognize Luke as Live for Physics. We go back a long way, various projects we've done over the years. Luke's now running a company called Electric Goddess, and he does research into batteries and how to stop them from catching fire. So Luke, take it away, please.
Thank you. Are you able to see the slides?
We are, yes.
All right. So since I've only got 10 minutes, we can't possibly address all the causes of battery fire. So we're just going to address the top 3. Okay. It's a little background on me. I've been in batteries since 2006. Been doing forensics and failure analysis on batteries since 2006. Designed battery packs for Joby Aviation, Airbus, Microsoft, Alphabet, Zero Motorcycles, Verisys, and many more companies there as well, that some of them I'm still in NDAs with. The good news is batteries can live long lives and safe lives through proper, robust design. So I'm going to talk about 3 issues that result in battery fires that we commonly see. Dan was lucky in that he got to see the drive shaft that the car hit in that situation. We never get called in if it's a clear-cut causality for the fire event. We only get called in when they are not able to determine a causality. So this means we get lots of the weird cases. This is a photo showing pouch cells which have had electrolysis from water and electricity consume the mid layer of the pouch laminate. So that's something like 10 microns of polyethylene laminating over 6 microns of aluminum foil. And you can see the inner micron layer has been consumed. This is a process called cathodic disbondment, where you have a laminated or adhered surface to metal, and your corrosion effect consumes that metal underneath it. You know, when we think about preventing corrosion, often we think about maybe galvanic corrosion, or these very low potentials you get when you combine dissimilar metals. In the case of corrosion in a battery pack, you know, even if it's just a single cell, you've got 3 to 4 volts to work with, which is the you know, adequate electric potential to undergo electrolysis on basically any metal, including gold, at 3 to 4 volts. So you can't solve this with platings. This is another example, not on the cell, but on battery peripherals. So that orange square that's hard to identify right now is actually a corroded battery power terminal. The circuit board with char on it is a battery management system. Both of these were inadequately protected from corrosion, and the result of this is fire. Here's some cylindrical cells which were not adequately protected from corrosion, and they've become pinholed. Some of the cells, you can actually see the the separator wrap outer layer right through the cell casing, because it's consumed completely through the can walls. These are some images of thermal runaway behavior testing. So we induce thermal runaway on every type of cell, including sodium ion cells, through every type of initiation means: overcharge, over discharge, over temperature, needle penetration, hot needle, nail, hot nail, laser initiation, squib charge initiation. All of these methods induce the cell into thermal runaway, and we can quantify the joules of energy released and chemicals in their decomposition product as they burn. That the rig you see in the background of the image on the left there is the door to our calorimeter. It's 1.5 inches thick of stainless, and we've actually damaged it with some of the cells that we test. You know, there's a large push right now for sodium or silicon anode cells, which have tremendous energy densities. Say we have cells at the lab that are 450 watt hours per kilogram and still cycle well. The trouble is the thermal runaway energy is so severe in these silicon anode cells. This is a close-up shot of a nail pin test on a cell. So this is an example of not corrosion-induced faults this time, but mechanically induced faults. You'll notice in the cross-section of this cell after the nail pin test, you see the little white nodules in the jelly roll. These are the remains of the aluminum. You obviously see the copper foil is intact. It melts at 1080 C. The aluminum melts at 660. There's a thermitic decomposition that happens in a nickel chemistry based cell, where you liberate often it's an NCM cathode, let's say, and often an 811 cathode today, or even a higher nickel ratio. These have a decomposition effect where they'll do a single replacement reaction with oxygen, consuming the aluminum foil that they're bonded to as their fuel, and decomposing that metal oxide as their oxygen source. This is the same way the thermite may have burned when you were a kid and mixed rust and aluminum dust together. You know, that it's the same single reaction replacement. This is the reason why many of the high nickel cathode cells that we test will burn underwater. Have some awesome video of them burning under 3 feet of cold water, in fact. We also burn cells in a pure argon environment and a pure nitrogen environment. They're able to have similar energy releases in both of those situations. when you replace atmospheric oxygen, you prevent the fuel fire from occurring. So when a cell burns, it often will boil its electrolyte, activate the vent, and spray this electrolyte. It has a flammability similar to acetone. It's a carbonate esters, diethylene carbonate, ethylene carbonate, propylene carbonate. So because you have this acetone, boiling acetone spray of electrolyte, this fire uses the atmospheric oxygen, but the thermitic decomposition that occurs does not require atmospheric oxygen to persist. This is some discussion on the type of battery failure investigations. Back to the three top reasons, though, that batteries fail that we see. And again, we only see the ones where the normal fire inspector was stumped, because if there was a clear causality, then we don't get called for the job. But the jobs that we see dominantly are corrosion induced faults. It's quite spectacular what even a bit of pure distilled water can do in a battery, for the reason that the moment you have say 0 ion water and you expose it between voltage, you're in atmosphere with 400 parts per million carbon dioxide, which will dissolve in at its appropriate partial pressure for that concentration, forming carbonic acid, which is a electrolyte to consume nickel, aluminum, copper, lead, tin, gold, and more. So this means even if you have only exposed the pack to dew, you can still have this reaction occur. So corrosion is the number one issue that we see. Number two issue that we see is inadequate mechanical protection, either from vibration, resonance, or chafing. So this is a situation where your dielectric was under some kind of mechanical stress, and that mechanical stress persisted until it failed that dielectric. So these situations initiate by having an electrical short where energy is dissipated through a path it wasn't intended to be. The third and common but least common of the three is a manufacturing or cell defect. In the last year of forensics, this is surprising to many, but the most fires that we did forensics on were iron phosphate this year. In the past, it's never been that many iron phosphate fires. One of the leading causes of initiation that we observed is cell winding defects of those iron phosphate cells. There's a race to push every dollar per kilowatt hour down towards zero. And in this race, if the jelly roll winding quality is not maintained, if separator positioning and electrode overhang is not maintained, then there's this chance for inadequate electrode separation and shorting to initiate the fire. Fortunately, from a forensics aspect, these are fairly simple to identify, as you'll see this large arced melted portion of the short area. Iron phosphate batteries are also easier to do forensics on because they don't undergo a thermitic decomposition. If it's between one catching the car on fire and burning the car down, or another catching the car on fire and burning the car down, it doesn't make much difference in the overall outcome if your iron phosphate pack caught fire or a high nickel pack caught fire. However, only the high nickel pack will burn underwater, and only the high nickel pack has that thermitic decomposition mechanism. Yeah, so happy to go into any of these avenues in more detail in questions and answers if you have any. Thank you.
Fantastic, thanks for that, Luke. As a chemist myself, I'm totally nerding out on this, and we will make these presentations available to any registrants who come along. And pleased to report that Chris Wood has been able to join us. Chris Wood from Allianz. Now, and we've got a couple of questions already about body corporates and insurance. So, Chris, I might throw to you as the last step in the chain of how to deal with fire is insurance.
How you going, Chris? Good evening, everyone. I'm really sorry about that technical difficulties. The Allianz firewall and Zoom just doesn't like to go. I'm going to try and share my screen if I can, and I'll see how that goes. And hopefully that will also share some sound as well. We'll see what happens. So yes, thank you very much. Really nice to be talking to your members tonight. And Allianz is a corporate member of the association, so it's nice to be talking to friends and comrades. I thought I should start off probably with how many EV fire claims we've had, specifically battery thermal runaway claims since 2018. And I searched our domestic and commercial fleet database and come up with a big net zero. So I think obviously I missed out on some of the previous presentations, but I'm going to guess Emma probably came up with a number of about 6 in Australia. Allianz is none in our claims database, and that's good news. We put together a TV commercial or a number of commercials, and hopefully the audio will come through, because even though we haven't had any fires, we knew it was something that was important to our customers, and we wanted to give them some confidence that if they insure with us, that we'd look after them. I'll try and play this. So hopefully that came across, and if it didn't, what it said was that we cover you for an electric vehicle battery fire, as well as your charging cables and equipment. And why did we do that? We did that because when we surveyed our customers that had EVs, or the early adopters, or the people that were thinking of going to EV, many of them said that battery fires was a concern for them, and that most reported that they'd seen several fires on YouTube or alike, or on the internet. And so we wanted to give them that confidence. So in our comprehensive insurance product, we've covered battery fire, and as I said, the charging equipment. They also told us that they wanted their vehicles to go to an EV capable repairer. So we've done that too. And we've also added a 2-year replacement if the vehicle is total lost. So that was some of the benefits we put in, just because of feedback from our customers. We also created a EV hub, so that there was more. So if they wanted more information, particularly on the fires, we included that subject in the EV hub on our website. And of course, we refer to EV FireSafe. We've been working with EV FireSafe for probably 2 years now, and that's been a great relationship. What we have got is not an EV battery fire situation. What we've got is a lithium battery situation. So I'm sure just about everyone can identify has probably got several of these devices. I know I've got at least 6 on this screen. And when we did a review, an analysis of our lithium battery fire claims, this is what turned up. So as I said, no passenger electric car fires involving the battery, but everything else. Would you like me to talk to you about premiums, Chris?
Yeah, that's a common question is why are EV premiums higher?
Yeah, well, there's a number of factors that go into premium setting, and while I can't talk about any one specific premium, when we look at premiums, we look at where you drive your vehicle and how you drive your vehicle. So whether it's for private use or business use, where it's being garaged, the driving or the claim history of the driver, the age, and the make model of the vehicle and the year model. So there's so many different factors, and then you go into different excesses, and then every couple of months we look at the claims cost and the repair cost of the different vehicles, and that all goes into the formula. So it is, are battery electric vehicles more expensive to repair? Is a question I usually get, and it depends on the repair and if the high voltage system is involved. As insurers, typically what we have done is use the past to predict the future, and that goes well for premium setting as well. And we simply haven't got enough EVs on the road in Australia at the moment, that we've got enough data that we can, we can make a lot of these premium decisions on. So at the moment, it's quite reactive, and I think that'll go on for quite a while. What I can tell you is anything that's new is typically more expensive to repair, hence that flows on to premiums. So while repairers are working out their piece, so getting accredited to work on high voltage systems, there's fewer options for repairers. So there's fewer repairers out there that have got the qualifications, and many of them, a lot of the cars are going to recommended repairers by that brand, and there's not a lot of those yet. So it's still not the norm. Also, electric vehicles tend to have more more ADAS, more advanced driver assistance systems, so more technology on board as standard. So they're quite expensive to repair, and sometimes we can't repair things we need to replace. So I think, if the high voltage system isn't involved, it gets back down to the technology that's on the car and the fact that it's just new. I don't know if you've got other questions there that I can answer.
No, if that's your presentation, then thanks very much, and thanks to all of our speakers. We've had a few questions come in on the Q&A box, so I might just indulge my own questions first. I do have a question for the EV FireSafe folks, so Emma and Dan. I saw that picking up a vehicle and submerging it in water was proposed as a solution. I can see a few logistical issues with that, not least evidence destruction if there was an issue there that needed to be investigated. How common is that likely to be?
The evidence destruction or the submersion?
No, sorry, the move towards dropping whole burning cars into a tank of water. Are we likely to see that as a solution in the future, or is it a bit extreme?
So do you want to go, Emma? Do you want me to? Happy to?
Yeah, you go.
So what we're seeing is it's quite prolific through the Netherlands and parts of Europe. They'll have a network set up with their tow truck drivers with this container. They don't always need to fill it. So if there happens to be an incident and it's not being able to be readily controlled, then they can submerge that container. Whether that vehicle is going to lose that forensics and that sort of telemetry through either the vehicle being destroyed by the fire or being submerged. But yeah, it does come with its own hazards as well. So there's a cost for the container. There's a cost also associated with the disposal of the water that's been used as well. The benefit is, compared to that water that's just running off down the road and down the gutter, it's contained. So there's unfortunately a lot of pros and cons with all of the systems out there. We do have situations where perhaps they've been over eager to jump to a solution. That may be doing the submersion method. It might be, there's also devices that'll shoot a spike up into the battery pack and things like that to get the water in there. So we're aware of some incidents where they might not have had thermal runaway perhaps, but they definitely did by the end of the incident. So it all needs the understanding and the awareness around what, why, and where and how to combat that as best as we can.
Yeah, no, that's neat. And a common complaint I have heard from volunteer firefighters is with an EV battery fire, they know that because it will burn out, it means that they're going to have to remain on site, keeping an eye on it for hours and hours. I mean, that seems to me to be the biggest complaint from them. Is that what you're hearing?
That's because as a volunteer firefighter myself, we want to get in and put the wet stuff on the red stuff and go home again. So they're just annoyed that we don't get to do the whole hero act, I think. But look, I hear that from firefighters all the time, but we've had 6 in Australia. Every single one's had major damage. It's, whenever we train rural volunteers, firefighters, I will often say to them, I will buy every person in this room a beer if you have an EV battery fire in the next 2 years. Yeah. I'm yet to open my wallet to buy a round of beers. So I think what we need to be focusing on, which is very much where we focus, is how do you manage an electric vehicle in a collision? Monitoring for the signs of battery fire, but how do you manage it in a collision? Because we see them in collisions every single week. So that's where we need to train our emergency responders, is in road rescue.
Excellent. Yeah. Niklas, I do have a question about your technology. I gather it's like many fire response technologies, it's about buying time. And if you can extinguish a fire for long enough to get people out of the way, then that's a positive.
Yeah. Of course, this is still yeah. That is like the approach that we have now to really ensure, as I believe Dan was talking to as well, with all the extinguishing water and everything, and the like poisoning and contaminating environment. That's why we see the smoke being a very useful and effective tool from an environmental point of view as well. But as you said, I mean, the number one thing is, of course, to ensure that we can keep the fire. If we are not able to extinguish it, at least keeping it under control before the pros get there and deal with it, basically. So yeah.
And it's probably a good opportunity to respond to the question about the potassium compound vapor.
Yeah, so if it, like, I don't know if I saw the question that you're referring to there.
It was under you might find it under the answered tab, which is, how does the potassium gas work with liquid cooled batteries?
Yeah. So I mean, the whole idea that we've seen in any types of fires that there are basically the absorption of the heat from the flame, as well as it breaks into the combustion engines of the flame, the chemical combustion engines. The Achilles heel, in the sense that we've seen for this type of potassium smoke, would be more longer glowing fires in, let's say, wood or metal that has a much higher temperature, in a sense that would also require longer maybe extinguishing time and maybe a bit more dense extinguishing agents as well. Because of course, once the product has released the agent from the unit, which in the Stix Pro unit takes only a few seconds, the smoke will, if it's not like contained within the area of the battery or inside of the battery, it will be released out into the atmosphere, and thus then having a lower effect in terms of the absorption and so forth. So that would be my answer to that question.
Cool. Cool. Luke, I wanted to ask you about the experience. Obviously, the United States has a lot more electric vehicles on its roads than we do, and your nation manufactures quite a few of them as well. Without treading into NDA territory, how many of those battery recalls that have been issued due to manufacturing defects have actually translated into an actual fire? Do you know?
Well, normally, as recalls cost so many millions of dollars, I've had 2 recalls myself. One was 25 million and one was $40 million cost. So we don't do recalls if there's not a critical need, and that critical need is usually that buying homes is expensive. And so this means, I guess one thing I could say is I've never yet seen a case where the actual causality of the event is what got recorded in the history books formally as the cause of the event. So a normal situation is you perform forensics and you determine causality, and then a PR story is released that, so far has never had anything to do with the causality. So and again, I can't mention OEMs here, but most of the battery fires are settled out of court by private settlement, because the company knows that if a word of it gets out to the public, it costs them far more money in PR than paying off one guy's house or whatever, the fire cost. Right? So I would say, yeah, sadly, the record that gets recorded, I mean, some of them are so preposterous too, but what goes down in history as the cause of the fire is, to my personal observation, never related to the cause of the fire. And in fact, when OEMs list reasons for recalls, say that you didn't protect from weather adequately, then you would say that the recall is some unrelated thing, like you need to do an update, or there's a gasket that was defective or whatever, and so yeah, essentially the public story, the public facing side is never the reality of the event.
And if I may indulge in one more chemistry related question, LFP batteries are widely known to be less likely to catch fire. I think I gathered from your presentation that once they do catch fire, the end result is very much the same, but the probability is lower. Is that correct?
Well, if it's an event like, say, a corrosion-induced molten salt bridge effect, which I forgot to play the video of when I gave my presentation, but this is an effect where the battery only needs to supply voltage and current into this short, that's forming. So it's chemistry agnostic to that initiation mechanism. What is an advantage, though, of course, is, iron phosphate fires go out when you steal their oxygen, for example, which is very convenient. And the temperature under which, the peak temperatures that they achieve are around usually, say, 400 C lower or so than we get with high nickel cells. So they have a higher temperature to initiate propagation and a lower temperature that they achieve during thermal runaway. So it is easier to make a pack which has propagation resistance using iron phosphate cells. We package all of our high nickel NCM cell clients in an endothermic potting material, which is 60% solid fillers by weight that undergo a one-time endothermic thermal decomposition, which has a huge quenching effect, and that thermal composition occurs at below the temperature to initiate. So a lot of the most fussy of cells will initiate around, say, 130 Celsius. The more robust cells initiate around 170 Celsius, let's say. But this endothermic filler decomposes at around 110 Celsius. And trying to heat it above that temperature is like trying to heat a pan of boiling water above, 100 Celsius. Doesn't matter how hot your burner is, you have to finish that phase change before it can raise the temperature adequately to propagate cell to cell. So we have very tight cell spacing with perfect plus zeros on propagation tests. So we initiate, say, 6 cells at once in the pack on a preheated pack at a full state of charge, and demonstrate that we have full cessation of that event propagating and spreading without requiring any external active systems or firefighting suppression. And we get our clients to that level before they ship product, which is great. And it would be, we wouldn't even have this conversation if all the OEMs did that.
Cool. And just to demonstrate how wide-ranging this conversation is tonight, Chris, if I might throw to you, we've seen pictures of signs on the front of ground floor parking lots with no electric vehicles in this parking lot. Now, I don't know, actually, it was no electrical vehicle, so I don't know what's more cringeworthy, the electrical vehicle or the fact that they've been banned from parking.
Yeah.
What can we do about this overreaction, honestly?
Yeah, I hate that terminology as well. Electronic vehicle, I get a lot. It frustrates me as well. We're starting to get feedback from some of our strata brokers and agents and customers, and I haven't heard the car park one before, but I have definitely heard it in strata. In fact, there was a question I was just answering there from Roger. We did recently, actually, EV FireSafe was also involved in this one, a WebEx on this whole question with OCN, the occupant. What was it? Emma,
Owners
the
Corporation.
Owners Corporation Network. That's correct. And they raised these topics about, in strata situations, you've got car parks downstairs. Again, the problem isn't EVs, it's lithium battery fires, and that's what I'm seeing. Well, I was going to say every day. It probably is every day. So I get notified of any of those types of claims. That's the real problem. So it's doing these information sessions and trying to get the word out to our customers and our brokers. So I'm doing a lot of technical presentations to our brokers so that they can talk to their clients about, hey, we've had 0 claims. As Emma said, six fires in Australia. When you cut them down, it gets lower and lower and lower. And I don't think anywhere involved that were being charged at the time, right? So that's not the problem, and we need to focus on the problem.
Yeah, it strikes me that there's also some good practice worth reminding people of. If you do have an e-bike or an e-scooter, don't charge it under your bed, like there's sensible things you can do. And perhaps Niklas's technology may find a way into the likes of off-vehicle EV, like e-bike battery charging or something like that, where there are opportunities to safely charge these batteries somewhere where, in the unlikely event that they caught fire, it can't spread.
Yeah, we looked at, from my presentation slide, 183 fires where the batteries were involved, and it's going to so many devices now because there's so many devices with lithium batteries in them, right? So it's mobility scooters, like disability mobility scooters, and it's pretty scary that these devices are catching fire like this in people's bedrooms and at the front doors. So you're right, it's about good practices, and there's a number of those great hints and tips on EV FireSafe website.
I think it's, sorry if I can jump in there, it's also a case of recognizing the early warning sign. So the popping, hissing, whistling noise is a sign that your battery is about to fail. And that's not a sign to go and try to put something over it or try and dump it in water or whatever you think might be a good thing. Yeah, exactly. It's time to GTFO, as we like to say. GTFO, call 000, let the firefighters work on it. And we had a conversation with a guy who had an e-bike go up in his apartment. He said, we heard this loud bang, loud kind of bang noises. It was like a gunshot. And he said he went out to check on his e-scooter and couldn't really see anything. So went back to bed, another loud bang, got up again. He unplugged it from the wall and thought, I'll put it out on the balcony. And then as soon as he closed the balcony door behind him, it went off. So that he was lucky. He got 3 bangs. Usually we get 1 and up it goes. So if you're hearing a loud gunshot noise, you're hearing loud hissing, it's too late. You need to evacuate and you know, you need to get everyone out of the building. And we've just for the record, we've just had our 3rd and 4th fatality in Australia due to personal mobility devices. We can't keep track of the fatalities globally, but in the first half of 2023, we're aware of 36 fatalities due to e-bikes and e-scooters globally. We think that's the tip of the iceberg. And in the 18 months to the middle of last year, we lost 4 whole families to e-bikes and e-scooters. One family, a mother and her 4 children, were killed by the inhalation of the gases before the fire even started. So yes, if you're hearing a loud popping, hissing, sounds almost like a jet engine taking off, it's too late. It's time to get out.
Yeah, Chris. We looked at the frequency of the fires, of these types of fires, and they've increased by 440% since 2010. So that just shows
and
you
that's
what's
simply
happening.
a metric of how many e-bikes and e-scooters and mobility scooters are out there in the market now. That's just going to happen.
Yeah. And when COVID happened, everyone went out and bought an e-bike, right? I know I did. I bought 2.
I heard the stat. So we've got 26 million electric vehicles on the road currently that have been made since ever. And there was 23 million e-bikes and e-scooters sold just last year. Going back to your comment, both Chris's, around the can't have EV charging or EVs in car parks. So there was a bit of hysteria about a internal publication got sent out by a hospital that was quickly made public. So that hospital has EVs, that hospital has their own EV charging. However, they didn't want randoms driving their own car into the car park and using the granny chargers or whatever, and extension leads and that sort of thing through the car park. The wording of the guidance probably wasn't that clear and that helpful. But even just the hysteria that was made off that post about, oh, they're banning EVs in car parks. No, it was actually just you coming in and charging randomly without asking in PowerPoints that they don't have tested for this sort of stuff. So we've got some stuff around safer charging for EVs, as Emma's just put up. I think I had the ABCB in one of my comments to someone else around in Strata, what can we do, all those sorts of things. We've got some information on the website. We've got an EV safer charging course at evfiresafe.business. There's the stuff from the Australian Building Code Board. AEVA has some stuff. Electric Vehicle Council has some stuff. Get educated and understand what you're dealing with. But there's so much FUD out there you're up against.
Luke, have you had much experience with non-electric car or non-OEM batteries and the way they're put together and what the most likely cause of those problems are?
Oh man, yes, we've done forensics many times from DIY batteries. You know, as an OEM, you have the budget to build many prototype samples, put them on vibe tables and shock tables, run them through, CTE shock extremes of wide temperature ranges, put them in salt fog chambers, and at the end of this testing, you've destroyed maybe 30 to 40 prototype battery packs, and then you have the confidence that you've made a safe one at the end of that destruction of 30, 40 battery packs. For each new design rev that you run, you need to run that validation process again. So when individuals DIY their batteries, rarely can they build more than one, as most DIYers can't afford to build a set of test suite batteries. And so, yeah, unfortunately, it's almost impossible to guess your resonance problems without actually validating them on a vibe and shock table. And you know, a lot of work goes in OEM packs, even for material choices and material compatibility in each different stack up, so that things don't creep and that your adhesive doesn't have dielectric migration over time, and that you have protection from humidity ingress. And it's impractical for a DIYer. Even when I build my own DIY packs, I don't trust them until they've undergone some kind of validation. Because assumptions are a good pathway to fire, unfortunately, in DIY batteries. A proven pathway.
And Emma, it sounds like the chargers are also a common cause of faults with these e-mobility devices.
Seen many charger malfunctions, sadly, especially on cheap products where they're driving every dollar of cost out of the design. Any extra safety and protections in the charger is each costs you pennies, right? And so many OEMs may have started with a well-populated board that has fail-safe behavior in the charger, and after a few years of buying that unit, they've cost down all of the functional safety out of it, and it still can charge the product, but it's one single fault tolerance away from a unpredictable outcome, then the worst case being over voltage, which can initiate almost any battery pack, especially for small mobility devices.
Yeah, correct. And we also see a lot of with e-bikes, e-scooters, power tools, that kind of thing, where the batteries failed or the chargers, the cables failed, and someone just jumps on Alibaba and they don't buy the OEM replacement. They buy a cheap knockoff, and that's when they start to see problems. But again, going back to fatalities, I know it's all a bit kind of morbid, but it's a really important point. We had a family of 5 killed in the Philippines because the e-bike that they bought, they plugged it in to charge it up overnight. The battery management system and the charging unit the charging cable was so poor, it couldn't actually stop the charge at 100%. It just kept going to the whole thing, went into thermal runaway. I mean, that's the kind of quality, the terrible quality that we're starting to see, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing in insurance claims as well. It's very difficult often for the forensic guys to be able to tell us whether it was the battery, the charger, or the cord that was the actual problem. And then, if you're able to get that information from our customer, very often they'll say, I don't know where the battery came from. We got it on Marketplace, or it didn't come with a cord, or whatever, which, we've even had some claims where people have decided, so they've had a flood, their home has been flood affected, their tools have been damaged. They've months later, they've gone and said, oh, that power drill, I wonder if it's all right. Let's put it on charge, and the battery pack's on charge, and see how it goes. And then, it's caused a property fire. And taking the rest of the house out.
Dan?
This could be a whole nother rabbit hole, but I was going to ask Luke how he's gone with the sodium battery testing you mentioned previously.
Well, I don't know what I can say for any reasons, but I think our lab right now has the most variety of sodium ion cells of any lab in the world. And we're evaluating their impedance retention, capacity retention, and safety behavior. And there's a wide range, I guess, is the answer on the safety behavior. People make sodium iron phosphate style cells, which have safety behavior similarly good to lithium iron phosphate cells. But they also have comparatively poor energy density. So many of the cells you see today are layered metal oxide NCM cathodes with sodium ion and a graphite anode, in which case you have a very similar outcome to the same kinds of provocations that initiate a lithium ion cell also initiate a sodium ion cell in those situations. It is a less electropositive ion, which is that is a safety advantage. The trouble with things that store energy is that if that energy releases into a unintended path for the energy, if you're going to store enough energy that it can push your car somewhere useful for you, then you have enough, plenty of kilowatts and kilowatt hours stored energy that if that energy releases in an unintended path, it is, many of us have used a plasma cutter to cut metal before, and a big shot plasma cutter might be 10 kilowatts or so. When your battery has an arc fault, like if the Plaid Model S behind me had an arc fault in its battery pack, we know that short circuit discharge current is around 2 megawatts. So it would be like running 200 of your garage plasma cutters simultaneously into whatever that load is. And of course, it's going to, clear that fault. And, we often see Lorentz force from the magnetic field in big arc strike events, not only liquefy the metal from the plasma exposure near the arc and the heating, but then eject it at supersonic velocities from Lorentz force. So the magnetic field of the short circuit itself on the liquid causes the liquid to expel boiling metal at supersonic velocities. I have sadly some scars on myself from these incidents, but they're great when you perform them in an 1.5 inch thick 316 stainless chamber. They're rough when they happen unintentionally.
That's definitely the place to be doing that kind of testing now. And we've got would love to talk on for hours and hours, but I'm sure some of us want to go to bed, and I certainly want to go and have dinner. But can I just say thank you to all of our hosts all around the world for joining us. We really appreciate the effort that you've made, and I hope we can all catch up at some point in the near future when our travels permit. Catherine Ittman had a question, but unfortunately we'll run out of time if you can't put it in the chat. Look, we'll put all of this up online. We will have a recording made available on YouTube, and anyone who registered for this talk will get a copy of that, and they can watch the rerun. So can I just say thank you again to everyone. Thanks for coming along, and thanks to our speakers. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Chris. See you later.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Good
Thanks
night.
for hosting this event, Chris.
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
guys. Have a great Easter.
Yeah.